Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I raised today to talk about a wonderful part of the world, Kangaroo Island. I was there yesterday for the fourth time in the past 4 weeks for the opening of the brand new airport, a $18 million airport which was jointly funded by $9 million of state government money and $9 million from the federal government. And it was $9 million that was committed when we were in government here in South Australia. And I want to thank the then Premier, the member for Cheltenham, and the Deputy Premier, the member for Enfield in particular, for the hard work that they did to make sure that we had that money to turn this airport into a world-class airport that matches the fantastic physical and natural attributes that Kangaroo Island has, as well as the wonderful produce that comes from that part of the world. But the people of Kangaroo Island are very upset about the new government's decision to get rid of the Commissioner for Kangaroo Island. Now, this is an incredible position, probably the first time anywhere in Australia that a position like this has been established. And it was established by our government because Kangaroo Island is a place with 4,500 people and 4,500 square kilometres. And it has its own challenges. I mean, there's a great resilient community there, both business community and wider community, and they get on and they get the job done despite the tyranny of distance and a water crossing. But they did need a hand in terms of having their voice heard at state level and indeed at a federal level. And so after lots and lots of consultation, the Kangaroo Island Commissioner was established, and at the election the Liberal Party made it an election promise to get rid of the Commissioner if they were to form government. Now, of course, on March 17th that happened, and that concerned a lot of people on Kangaroo Island, a lot of traditional Liberal voters. And I was keen, they wanted me to go in and sign a document that they were preparing to send to the new government. I said, well, it's probably not the best thing to have my name on it, but I'll work quietly behind the scenes and just talk to members of the new government and explain, look, why don't you give it a chance and see how good this is? Because when you're in opposition, things can look different to when you actually get in government. And I think this has been a fantastic thing for Kangaroo Island, the Commissioner's appointment and establishment. And but the Liberals have pressed on with it and announced last week that they're going to get rid of the Commissioner in September this year. Now, I think that's a really negative step, and I'd explained that quietly, because, as I've said right from the outset, I want to fight for people, not with people. So I want to do it the right way. I mean, I don't want to play politics with this. I just wanted to get out there and do the right thing by Kangaroo Island. But by getting rid of the Commissioner, there are only losers. The people of Kangaroo Island are losers, the businesses of Kangaroo Island are losers, the government, whether whoever's in government, are losers, but the Liberal Party are really big losers as well. In fact, there's probably only one winner in all this, and that would be me. But I don't want to win. I really do not want to win. I would rather see the Commissioner stay in place. Now, there's a letter that was sent to the Premier, signed on behalf of 350 businesses on Kangaroo Island in industries as diverse as farming and food production, accommodation providers and commercial artists. And it includes a myriad of small and micro businesses in retail, trades and services. Now, these people all want the Commissioner to stay in place. And what we heard last week when there was a few Liberal members of Parliament on the island, and what we heard yesterday from the Premier, was that, well, if we do it for Kangaroo Island, then what about Port Lincoln, and what about Mount Gambier, and what about these other places? Well, it's a little bit like saying if one part of South Australia has running water, that no other part of the state is allowed to have running water. So how about we get commissioners for Mount Gambier that can maybe bring both sides of the border together, that consults with the Victorian government and the South Australian government? How about we get someone along the river? But what I was really upset with yesterday, and a lot of people on the island were upset with this, was the Premier went over there as part of the opening ceremony for the new airport, and a very well-respected long-term Liberal voter went up to the Premier and just said, look, I hope you're supporting the Commissioner for Kangaroo Island. She does a great job. And he wasn't offensive in any way, and the Premier demanded an apology. Now, this man asked some other people around and said, was I offensive to the Premier? And they said, no, you weren't. But what he said was, look, I went up and apologised to the Premier because I had to put the interests of my community ahead of my own thoughts. But he's pretty ropeable with the Premier. He's pretty ropeable with this new government. And I've got to say, a lot of people on Kangaroo Island are very, very upset. So I just urge the government one more time, publicly this time to please retain the Commissioner for Kangaroo Island. She's done an amazing job to help grow a wonderful part of the world, and I think she should be allowed to continue on for many years to come.
The member for Kent.